Welcome back to another episode of the At the Pylon podcast. On today's post-game reaction episode, we have Dolphins versus Pats on Sunday Night Football, fully recapped for you. Unfortunately, the Patriots come up short, 24-17, but we're going to dive into that last play of the game. Was Cole Strange in for the first down? I think he was, but we're going to talk about it with our analyst Chandler Betts coming up on the pod. Next up, Pat's slow starts to both this game and the Eagles game. What's going on and what needs to change for the Patriots to pick up the pace in the first half of games. And finally, we'll play the blame game here on the podcast. Who's to blame for the Patriots' early season struggles? All that and more on today's episode. Let's dive right into it. And welcome everybody to the At the Pylon podcast alongside Chandler Betts. My name is Nick Antonakas, and Chandler, heartbreaking loss. God, 2 weeks in a row now, heartbreakers for the New England Patriots. They come up short to the Miami Dolphins, 24-17. We're going to talk a lot about this game in full, a full analysis coming at you right ahead here on the podcast. But let's talk the finish to start things off. Mike Gesicki gets a pass from Mac Jones on 4th and 4. It looks like he's trying to stretch out for the first down. Can't get there, but he ends up lateraling it to Cole Strange. Strange seems to take it all the way to the first down marker. I personally thought he had the first down. They originally marked it a first down on the field. After further review, they overturn it, and the game ends for the New England Patriots there as Miami gets the ball back. They take victory position. And I guess we'll just start with your take, Chandler. Was it a first down?
So as the play was happening, I immediately get war flashbacks to Las Vegas last year. I am losing my mind, saying, not again, not again. In the moment, I thought he had the first. I looked back at it yesterday. I looked back at it today. The line to gain was the 29. He was down. They made the right call. And I hate it. I hate that I have to admit it, but if you look at where his knee was, the actual chain marker was a little bit before the 29, but the line to gain itself was the 29 is what they were saying. So I do believe that he was actually short.
That to me is just bizarre because I go from the point of the on-field call is basically what's going to stand unless if they can find substantial evidence that it was not a first down. So I guess what you're saying is that you believe that it was substantially not a first down, which I just totally disagree with. Like if they originally called it, no, he's short, then it would have been like, all right, like, you know, that's a shame. Like it would have still gone to review, of course, but to overturn something like that is something obviously more difficult, especially when it's that close. But considering that they called it a first down originally, and on top of that, it looked like he had the first down. To me, it was just crazy that they ended up calling that back.
There was one camera angle, the one that was panned towards where the actual orange marker was, that you had an entire view of exactly when his knee goes down, and you can freeze frame it right there. You can see that his head is at the 29, but the ball is behind.
But weren't they talking on the broadcast? I remember the analyst, I forget his name now, but he was saying kind of, yep. No, not Collingsworth. They're rules analyst.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember his name.
Yeah, but he was basically saying that it had to do with whether or not they were going to call it at the hash or like the marker itself. Because
yes, so that's what I was kind of alluding to with where the marker and the hash were. They kept saying that the 29 was, and I think there's an entire another debate to be had about whether the actual chain system should just be completely gotten rid of because they have chips in the ball that can tell you exactly where it is. So I tend to look at the hash, not the marker, and the hash tells you that it was short. The marker told me, like I said, the marker said that he got it, but I don't look at the marker.
But that's the thing. They literally looked at the marker earlier in the game. There was a play that the Patriots had it on 3rd and inches, I believe, and they ended up marking Ramondre just short.
Yes.
To force a 4th down. Now, I mean, of course, we ended up getting the conversion anyway, but still, if they're going to play that metric and force things on the marker itself, then why doesn't that stand when it comes to the final and most pivotal play of the game for the New England Patriots? I mean, I guess to take a pivot for a sec, it was a fantastic play. I mean, Gesicki, It was just, people were saying it was going to be the best offensive line play with the ball since,
Dan Collins.
yep, and that punt return. So obviously a great effort by New England on that front, but I feel like the offensive line had a lot more to worry about other than that that last play coming up short, and we'll dive into it. But let's start with the first half, Chandler. 17-3 at halftime. Miami Dolphins were leading. Only 3 points for the New England Patriots in that first half. Talk to me. What's going on? Why? What is up with these slow starts for the New England Patriots?
So I think this is really interesting because the way that an offensive coordinator comes into a game is they prepare a script for the first 50 or so plays. And the first 50 or so plays, usually you don't stick for it the entire time, but that is what you prepare going into the game. And that's what the Patriots are traditionally really good at, because obviously we have the greatest coach of all time. And when you give the greatest coach of all time a week to prepare things, usually he does a pretty good job. We aren't seeing that right now, and I don't exactly know why. Belichick has always said that you only know when your team is good when you're good past Thanksgiving. So I'm really holding out hope that he doesn't know exactly what the offense is going to look like by the end of the season, because there is an eternal just war among himself whether we're ever going to run the ball successfully. And I don't know. I think he wants us to. Obviously, that's his MO, but we can't, because our offensive line is not good. And I know I'm kind of jumping the gun talking about that, but the offensive line, before the first game, I said this is a fringe top 10 offensive line. I was so wrong. Oh my gosh, this is atrocious, because we had 4 of our 5 starters in that game, and the one person who wasn't a starter for Darian Lowe wasn't the worst person on the offensive line that game.
Yep.
It was the inside 3. And the inside 3, when you have a slow running back in Ramondre Stevenson, who is not going to, we saw the complete dichotomy of rushing attacks today or yesterday, because Raheem Mostert is a 4.32 speed guy. I talked about that last week. He's so fast. A chain is a 4.36, I believe, maybe also 4.32, something like that. And then Ramondre Stevenson is, I don't have it off the top of my head, I would guess like a 4.6.
Somewhere around there, probably.
Which is because speed isn't his game.
Yeah.
But when you can't run in between the tackles, speed needs to be your game. And we don't have a fast running back. We actually had a fast running back in Pierre Strong Jr., but we traded him for a mediocre offensive tackle who I don't remember which one, but whatever.
It might have been Anderson.
I think it might have been Calvin Anderson, yeah.
It might have been Anderson.
I mean, yeah,
he didn't have
a backup for a starter, so I guess, but also we have the same profile running back in Zeke and Stevenson, and one's really good at pass protection, one's really good at pass catching. That's cool, but if your top runner is 50 yards on 15 attempts, that's not good enough.
Exactly, and that kind of goes back into the point that I was making all the way back in the offseason, in our offseason episode, that the Patriots just lacked depth at running back. We had 2 power backs, and then we had Ty Montgomery, who's a practice squad floater. So obviously you can't put all the blame on the running backs here, because the offensive line, like you said, was atrocious. I mean, our 2 inside guys, besides Cole Strange having that play at the end of the game, I believe he had 1 penalty, as well as just Mac getting constantly pressured and the running game going absolutely nowhere. But I guess part of the thing starts with the fact that Mac was running out of options on offense. It all kind of started with Demario Douglas's fumble that led to him getting benched for the rest of the game. What were your thoughts on the fumble? Was he to blame? Obviously, he ended up getting caught by Bradley Chubb on from behind. He kind of just punched the ball out there. Brutal fumble, don't get me wrong, but do you think Belichick was a little bit harsh to just pull him out of the game completely and throw him in the doghouse?
100% I do. I don't think that was his fault. That was just an excellent play by an excellent defensive player in Bradley Chubb. There was no way that he could have known that he was coming behind him. And Douglas is that profile of explosive player that he's the only one that we have. And to take him completely out of the game kind of neutralized our offense to a certain extent. And it's interesting that once he came out, the offense started putting up points, but I don't feel that it looked all that much better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think that he is a really important player. He's a great route runner. He has good hands, and we saw it last year even when we were questioning when Ramondre got benched, or maybe that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
In his rookie season, yeah.
Yep.
When he got benched for fumbling, I think it was also against Miami, actually.
Yes, it was second game.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, I think it was the season opener. He fumbled in the red zone.
Yes, Mac's first game.
Yep.
Yes. And I at least was like, why are we benching him? He is a power running back when Damian Harris, I think, is pretty overrated, and he kind of always was. Why are we benching him? And then he took him like a game and a half to get out of the doghouse. So hopefully it doesn't take Douglas that long.
Yeah, and it obviously started to cost the Patriots a little bit. Like you said, Douglas is that speed wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Plenty of times we tried to go deep. Mac was talking about it post game. He just couldn't get the ball deep today. Part of it was because he had absolutely no time to throw half the time. But the other half of it was guys like Kendrick Bourne, who I love. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was really disappointed when he wasn't involved in the offensive scheme last year. But the fact of the matter was, and obviously he had a great game last week, but the fact of the matter is he just wasn't there today. He was getting locked up. He couldn't get that extra stride to get to those balls that Mac Jones was throwing down deep. And at the end of the day, those dynamic plays, at least the lack of them, was what was costing the Patriots, especially in this first half.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at his stats, he had 9 targets, 4 receptions, 29 yards, and the whole offense didn't have a single pass that went for longer than 15 yards, longer than 14. And that is in the modern NFL. If you look at Miami, they had 1, 2, 3, 4 receivers catch a ball over 18 yards. Braxton Berrios, Ahmed, Crackcraft, and Jalen Waddle, of course, had that one screen that went for a while.
And he had that big play downfield as well in the second half.
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we talk about the blame game, but there's a severe lack of chunk play offense for the Patriots. And also, when you don't have chunk play players, you need to be able to control the time of possession. And when you can't run the ball, you can't really do that.
Yeah, so obviously a lack in running offense for the New England Patriots is kind of what kept them stagnant in this first half. When we transitioned to the second half, the Pats were able to kind of muster up some offensive plays. Mac Jones, I felt, had an outstanding second half, not even from a statistical standpoint, but from the fact that he was really leading this team down the field. Which reminded me flashes of Brady a little bit, just charging the team downfield, staying poised when the going gets tough, and cashing in some touchdowns finally. I mean, it took a half to get things going for the Patriots, but we started to get rolling at least a little bit in the second half to give us a chance. What did you see from the offense that kind of brought them to life? What do you think was the key for that?
I saw a very similar thing as to what I saw last week. Like I said, Mac Jones, pocket mobility is the phrase of the season so far. And I don't like that he has to have pocket mobility because that's telling me he doesn't have a pocket. But he's moving around. He's able to throw on the run. There was a really nice throw across his body to Juju. He had, of course, the touchdown. There was another throw to Juju, actually, who's, now that I'm saying it out loud, is starting to become the extended plays guy. The one toward the end zone was a little bit short.
Yeah, where he called him back. Yep.
That's called quarterbacking. And that's something that I've been very impressed with Mac. Yeah, that's the most important thing that I'm seeing in the offense in terms of good things right now.
Yeah, but other than that, running defense certainly didn't come alive. Mondre had a touchdown in the second half, of course, but like you said earlier, didn't get over 50 yards for the day. I believe Zeke had 5 carries for 13 yards. I want to say I have it written down somewhere here. Yep, 5 for 13. So it was just stagnant in the running game, and that continued in the second half. The defense, on the other hand, you and I both talked about it last week. Cornerbacks needed to be key for the New England Patriots in this game against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And we were starting from the ground up, to say the least. Jonathan Jones was not able to play. Marcus Jones ended up going down midway through the first half. What did you see from our corners, and how much do you think of a factor that had in the Patriots not being able to contain the Miami Dolphins.
Well, Christian Gonzalez is excellent. That is the first thing I'd like to say.
He had a great game.
He is. Tyreek Hill did not have a big day. He wasn't on Tyreek for the whole game, but 5 receptions for 40 yards. They didn't have a player go over 100 yards. That's very impressive in terms of the pass game. It seems as though schematically we were justifiably so very afraid of that offense. There were a lot of times that we had 3 safeties deep.
Yep.
Which is something that you very rarely see. And it was very interesting to see that, but that really allowed them to have a strong run game with most getting 121 yards on only 18 attempts, which is not great for us.
No.
But as for the cornerbacks, I'm a known Miles Bryant hater, but he wasn't that bad.
Oh, I thought he played okay.
Yeah,
my concern was with Shaun Wade.
Yeah,
but I mean, the poor guy's only had 29 defensive snaps in the past 2 years, so you can't really put all the blame on him. But the fact that we're getting so trimmed short here in our cornerback room is just a concerning sign early on.
Yep, yeah, we're 2 games in. That's it's grand. This is going so well. But
let me just say, thank God we drafted Gonzalez in the first round. Everybody else who was saying that we should have gone wide receiver would have been kicking themselves very badly right now if we didn't have Gonzalez starting in the lineup.
Oh yeah, very true. Yeah, it's an excellent pick, and I'll say this, I'm sure, at least 5 more times this year. But to be able to have traded back to get him also is so good. And also to see Marte Mapu didn't have too much of an impact on the game, but just another rookie starting.
Keon White was in there as well. I saw him making especially on that first red zone defensive session for the New England Patriots defense. Keon White made a couple great tackles there.
Yeah, he is, again, the draft class is hitting really well, but again, we'll talk more about that in like the blame game part.
Yeah, I guess we'll just go through a couple more positives for New England. They had that great blocked field goal attempt.
Oh,
in the second half. I mean, Brendan
that is one of the greatest football plays I've ever seen.
What a great play design by Belichick. You know, when everybody comes, and again, we'll talk about this in the blame game, when Belichick comes up with these just magnificent play designs, it just leads me to believe, like, why are you out here questioning the best coach of all time?
Yes.
Why are you, everybody, like, half the people I see on Twitter nowadays are just like, fire Belichick. This offense is 70.
He's 79 and 90 without Brady.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Do you know the situation that we were in 2020? We got 7 wins with that horrible team. I
will always say, other than the Super Bowls, that is his greatest ever accomplishment. That team should have went 3-13. The team was so bad.
But yeah, back to the block punt. Talk about it, or the field goal. Excuse me.
Oh, it was so good. I've watched a lot of football in my life. I've never seen anything like that. I've never even thought about that as a possibility. He just did, like, in the old Madden games, when you would like play, you could turn off offsides and you would just like, your player would just be running in place like this. That is exactly how it felt. He timed it so perfectly. It was like an outside version of Troy Polamalu. Oh, it was so good. And then to not score after that was so frustrating.
How did it? Is that when we threw the pick? Is that the possession with Mac?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That was not a good decision.
That was not a good throw at all.
No, that was a really bad throw.
And I'm very pro Mac Jones, and we'll see in the blame game segment. Again, this is a big hype up for the blame game segment coming ahead at you.
Yes,
here,
I know it's gonna be. We gotta really deliver.
So I guess
like, and not to talk about something that nobody here and nobody listening to this at all cares about. It was exactly the same throw that UMass threw in their game the day before, and they should have won, and they didn't because our quarterback threw the exact same pick in the exact same spot on the goal line, and I was so mad. And to see that again, bad weekend in football for your boy right now. Very bad weekend.
It was a great play by Howard. Don't get me wrong. I can't discredit him.
Of course.
Just not good decision-making from Mac Jones. And what was a day that we saw a lot of great decisions made on his front in terms of running the offense live on the field. So disappointing to say the least, but we'll trudge on. It's time. Let's play the blame game, Chandler.
Oh.
Who's at fault for the Patriots' early season struggles here? You can pick an individual. You can pick a position group. Go for it.
So this was one that I didn't want to say. It's our general manager. It's not our coach. It's our general manager. And our general manager is
Bill Belichick.
there we go.
Okay, I
When
want
you
to
look
hear
at the
this.
roster, I've said it since before the first game. I wanted to be wrong. I'm starting to think I might have been wrong a little bit about Mac. I'm not fully ready to say that he is the forever future of the Patriots. I think that he's definitely a good quarterback that will forever, and by forever, I mean for the next like 11, 12 years, have a spot in the NFL as a good middle to maybe slightly above middle starter quarterback. I'm not ready to say that he's the person that can win us playoff games on his own. And when you have a quarterback like that who's not going to win you playoff games on your own, you have to have players that are excellent. You have to have chunk players. You need to have players like the Miami Dolphins have. And I know that you're able to do that when you stink for so long. You're able to get Tua as a top 10 pick. I think he was 5. You're able to get Jalen Waddle. You're able to trade so many picks to finesse the system and get Tyreek Hill eventually. You're able to do all of these things. You're able to get, they didn't even have probably their best linebacker, Jalen Phillips. He wasn't even playing.
Yeah.
He had a back injury. You're able to get Christian Wilkins in the first round. You're able to hit on all these great picks. We haven't had that luxury because we were so good for so long. But when you look at your team and you're spending so much money in free agency every year, and you're surrounded by, and to take a quote from the WWE, you're surrounded by a bunch of B+ players. You don't have a star. You don't have a good player. You don't have a 5-star. You have Devontae Parker and Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, I don't want to give a whole lot of Hunter Henry slander. I've been very happy with him. Everyone else, though, I'm cool slandering anyone else pretty much. The only person, actually, there were 2 people who were targeted and caught every single one of their balls. Ramondre Stevenson, little dump offs for 10 yards, and Demario Douglas, person that we benched. The only 2 people that didn't have a drop all game. And I'm not saying necessarily a drop is a receiving stat, like it is, but it's very circumstantial. You don't have people that you can rely on. Like a great example of this, and it's an unrealistic thing to expect to have a player like Justin Jefferson. But last year in the Bills-Vikings game, when Kirk Cousins just throws that ball up and Justin Jefferson comes down with it, I think it was like 4-22.
Yep.
You don't have a player. If I'm looking before every play, I'm pretending that I'm the quarterback. I don't look across my offense and think, he's going to be open. I don't know. Kendrick Bourne's a pretty good route runner. He got absolutely destroyed yesterday.
He did.
Gesicki, tight ends are very schematic, I feel, unless you're a truly excellent one like a Gronk, like a Travis Kelce, like maybe this upcoming year, like a Brock Bowers coming out of Georgia this year. Those are the types of players that I'll look at. I'll say, if everything else fails, I'm going to look at him. He's going to know what I need to do, and he's going to get open. Hunter Henry and Mac Jones are kind of developing that, but that's not exactly what you need.
Let me just say something here. While the Patriots' lack of a superstar, I guess, is something that I do recognize and I understand. That's not my reason for the Patriots' struggles here early on, because I'll start at the vocal point that when our offense is in sync, we can score. We saw it against the Philadelphia Eagles, like I said multiple times last week, one of the best defenses in the NFL. And we saw it again this week against the Miami Dolphins. When our offense was in sync, it took time, but when they were in sync, we scored. And this is something that I couldn't say last year about the New England Patriots. In saying that, what is putting the offense out of sync? I believe it's the offensive line. And that's where all of our problems are starting. You can give the excuses that I did last week when we did the grading of the offensive positions. I was saying, considering the circumstances, the offensive line played all right, C+, whatever. The fact of the matter is, when we have a swinging carousel of offensive linemen who don't know how to play with each other because they're playing with different guys every week. And half the guys that we recruited, we went and splurged on in off-season trades right before the cutback date. It's just unbelievable because the thing that's disrupting our offense, you can say, sure, we don't have that dynamic above B plus player. We sure, our offensive weapons are a bunch of B plus players. You can say that. But if you give Mac Jones a couple of seconds to throw the ball, we saw today, we saw last week against some of the best defenses in the league with B plus players, you can score. So if you give Mac Jones a reliable offensive line week by week, so he's not, running around and having to use his mobility, which, by the way, has been fantastic this year, but that he's not having to go through that motion every time, jump through hoops to get a 10-yard completion, which we saw plenty of times against Miami last night. This offense will operate a lot better. And when we go back to our points at the beginning of the season, Ramondre Stevenson was our 1 5-star player on this offense. He has not looked like it at all this year. Who is that because of? The offensive line. We see Stevenson trying to wait it out, trying to search for different routes, trying to power his way through. But the fact of the matter is, when you have good teams in front of you with good front sevens, you can't just pound your way through, guys who are making a bunch of money to do what they do. Because the fact of the matter is, the defensive lines that we faced so far this year are just too much for one man to overcome. We need the rest of the offensive line to play their part. And like I said, considering circumstances, fine, you can cut a little bit of slack to the offensive line week 1 for all the injuries that they were facing. But week 2, we were missing one guy, Trent Brown, who had a great game first game. But we had the majority of our starters back from last year. And when you look to last year, Trent Brown was my biggest problem with the offensive line. So this should be all fixed. But it wasn't. It was just an incredible disappointment to see how much the offensive line was affecting not only the pass game, Mac Jones's mentality, but the run game. Zeke went 5 for 13, as I said earlier. Ty Montgomery had no rushing yards, no rushing attempts whatsoever. And Ramondre Stevenson, 15 carries for 50 yards. It's just not going to do it when you need your run offense to be involved in the game. But I want to hear what you have to say because, as much as I can acknowledge that a lack of a superstar is something that's partially holding us back, I don't think it's the full 9 yards there.
I do agree that the offensive line is a huge issue. And that would be, if you had to give me 2 of them, that'd probably be my second. But if you look at a team like the Bengals in 2020, when they made the Super Bowl, there is a whole debate going into that year, that draft class, whether they take Jamar Chase or they take Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell has, of course, turned out to be an excellent right tackle, one of the best in the league for the Lions, and they are using him and they're doing really well as a result of that. Now, it's maybe not a great time to reference how good the Bengals are right now because they've been really bad this season, but you've seen that if you have excellent players and good play calling, you can avoid one mistake, like one weakness on your team. Now, if you want to say that weakness can be offensive line, that's fine. I'm just saying that weakness is one good player because I think that it's easier to get one really good player than to get, say, 3 really good players in the offensive line.
Okay.
If we had one truly great player, and I don't know when we would have got that player, I think the best time probably would have been 2020 draft when we could have got Brandon Ayuk instead of a N'Keal Harry. I think it was Brandon Ayuk. Maybe he went right before.
No, N'Keal Harry we got in 2019. We
2019.
passed up on who do we pass up on? AJ Brown and DK.
Terry McLaurin,
Oh.
among other people, yeah. Not to reopen old wounds. But yeah, every time I see Jalen Reagor on the field or on the sideline, reminds me because he was in that class, of course, as well. Yeah, but you really need, because it was so evident to see that the Dolphins are, in my opinion, the archetype for a team in the 2023-2024 season. If you look at how excellent Mike McDaniels has been, Mike McDaniel, excuse me, that is singular, not plural. How excellent he's been at play calling. There was a stat that they showed on the screen that I believe that it was 81% of their plays involve some kind of motion, which is just an absurd number. When you think about the Patriots offense, if I were to take a guess, it's probably like 40. Now that's a very different style of play, but that's because he's taking their strengths into advantage. And they have the opposite strengths as our offense. We have a lot of bigger body people. We have a Devontae Parker, Ramondre Stevenson. Tight end game is huge for us. They have burners. Raheem Mostert, Achane, Waddle, Hill. Braxton Berrios is pretty fast. The other guy who they were talking about as a sort of Deebo Samuel-esque player, whose name I kind of don't want to try to pronounce.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second because what you're saying is true about the Miami Dolphins. But when you look at the game last night, none of their superstar players made that big of an impact. The Patriots defense was able to contain them very well. When you look at one aspect of the game that really won Miami this contest, it's the fact that their offensive line was flawless almost, besides that one stupid Isaiah Wynn penalty, which obviously, of course, Isaiah Wynn in the first half.
Yeah.
But besides that, they looked great. The Patriots couldn't get to Tua, which was one thing that really disrupted them the one time that Judon did get a sack and was one of the things you were talking about last week that the Patriots needed to do. But their run game was fabulous.
That's true.
Mostert was running all over us. So if you give the Patriots this type of if you gave the Patriots the Dolphins offensive line right now, I mean, would I want win back? No, but they looked good yesterday. So if you give the Patriots, if you give the Patriots the Dolphins offensive line, they're winning that game yesterday, no question. No question.
Here's my question for you, and I'm not saying that you're wrong.
If we trade the two offensive lines, we're winning that game.
Do you think that the Miami offensive line itself is very good, or do you think that the scheming allows their offensive line to be good? Because if you look at most of their run plays, where were their run plays? Were they through the offensive line?
Okay, a good amount were outside, but look at that 42-yard run for the touchdown. That was right through the middle.
That's true, but you do that by setting up. They talk about it in the broadcast. They talked about it a lot. How Miami is an outside zone team, and how a lot of their runs are something that is very new. I haven't really seen it super regularly. It's like a sort of an orbit, which is when you'd be in shotgun and the running back goes around the back of the quarterback, and it's a sort of counter. It's like a mix between a counter and an off tackle run, and that kind of negates an offensive line. It's very important, but the reason that their interior runs, the reason that they're when they scored the touchdown on the sort of read option-ish play through the middle, it's because the Patriots had to so intensely expect the outside zone that once you get that leverage, you don't need to do much as an offensive lineman.
Okay,
that is a scheme win. I don't know if that's a player win.
But I don't think our scheme is the problem. We don't have a bad offensive line scheme.
I agree. We have different schemes. I think that our offensive line is terrible. I think theirs is good. I'm not saying that theirs isn't
good. But that's all we need. All we need is a good offensive line. I'm not saying we need to sign 5 superstars to put there. We just need 5 pretty good guys to put in front of Mac Jones. Give him more than 2 seconds to get rid of the ball. That's what I'm saying.
No, that's very true. I agree.
And I think that would outweigh the fact that we would need a superstar player, because we saw if we're facing off against good defenses, that one weapon is what Belichick has specialized in doing throughout the past 20 years.
Yep.
Limit the superstar and down goes the ship. The Dolphins are a little bit of a different case because they have so many superstars. But when you look at it from a perspective of the Patriots, that's very unrealistic to just recruit a bunch of superstars in 3 years after Tom Brady left and we were good for so long. Like you were saying, we can't get a whole band of 5-star players together. And I don't think one would make a huge difference. So I think one last thing I want to touch on before we close out here. When we're considering the blame game, everybody right now on social media, everybody in the Twitter community and the Patriots fandom community, at least, is saying that Mac Jones and Bill Belichick are to blame. And to me, that's just ludicrous. Belichick has made some mistakes from a general manager perspective. You and I both acknowledge that. I don't think that's the Achilles heel of this team right now. It's the offensive line. But when you look at it from a play calling perspective every week and you say Bill Belichick needs to be fired, Mac Jones needs to be benched, it's just ridiculous because it's clear to say that that's not been the problem for the New England Patriots so far, at least this season.
Yeah. Belichick, the coach, is still an excellent coach. It's really hard for me. I agree. I'd just like to circle back quickly to what you said about the 3-year point. You're right that it's unrealistic to expect the team to completely have a slew of 5-star players. If you look at even last year's draft, the wide receivers that we've taken, Tyquan Thornton. Where's Tyquan Thornton? Injured again.
Yeah.
Even when he was healthy, he's not a good route runner. He's essentially just N'Keal Harry again, a big body person who's there to catch the balls.
Fast N'Keal Harry, basically.
Yeah, he's fast N'Keal Harry, exactly. Before that, 2021 draft class, he drafts a lot of quality defensive players. Christian Barmore was a great pick in that draft class. Of course, that was Mac as well. But if you don't even try to hit on a talented wide receiver and then take the next best option, which isn't even a starting caliber person, you only have yourself to blame when there's not a person to get open.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point to kind of close on here. Patriots, a lot to prove this upcoming Sunday against the New York Jets. We'll have a game preview episode coming for you later this week. But Chandler, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everybody for joining us on this post-game reaction episode. Stay tuned later this week. We'll have that episode, as I said, previewing the game against the New York Jets. But for now, my name is Antonakas alongside Chandler Betts. We'll see you later this week.